1 month before the Duperrault family boarded the Bluebelle, Captain Julian Harvey walked into an insurance office and did something unusual. He took out a $20,000 life insurance policy on his wife, Mary Dean. Double indemnity if she died in an accident. It should have been simple. One body, one tragic accident at sea, one massive payout. But Harvey made a critical mistake, because on the night he decided to act, someone saw what he did. And within hours, there wouldn't be one body, there would be 5. 4 of them weren't part of the plan, and the 5th person, an 11-year-old girl, was supposed to go down with the ship, but she didn't. This is the true story of the Bluebelle massacre and how the perfect crime fell apart in the worst way possible. Let's go back to where it all began, November 1961, Green Bay, Wisconsin. Dr. Arthur Duperrault was living the American dream, a successful optometrist, devoted husband to his wife June, and father to 3 children, 14-year-old Brian, 11-year-old Terry Jo, and 7-year-old Renee. After years of hard work, Arthur decided to give his family the trip of a lifetime. A week-long sailing charter through the crystal waters of the Bahamas aboard a 60-foot yacht called the Bluebelle. The captain was a man named Julian Harvey, 44 years old, decorated war hero, fighter pilot in World War II in Korea. On paper, he was the perfect choice, experienced, professional, trustworthy. What the Duperraults didn't know was that Julian Harvey was drowning in debt. His business ventures had failed, and just 1 month before their charter, he'd done something that should have raised every possible red flag. He'd taken out a $20,000 life insurance policy on his 6th wife, Mary Dean, who would be serving as the ship's cook. Double indemnity if she died in an accident. This wasn't even Harvey's first suspicious incident at sea. Years earlier, another wife and her mother had drowned under mysterious circumstances during a boating trip. Harvey had been the sole survivor then too, but somehow he'd walked away without charges. The Duperraults boarded the Bluebelle in Fort Lauderdale on November 8, 1961. The children were ecstatic. Brian loved sailing. Terry Jo couldn't wait to explore the islands. Little Renee was just happy to be on an adventure. For 6 days, everything was perfect. Turquoise waters, warm sunshine. The family laughed and swam and made memories they thought would last forever. By November 12th, they were on the final leg of the journey, heading back to Florida. Home was just hours away, but Julian Harvey had other plans. That night, after the children had gone to bed, Harvey made his move. On the deck of the Bluebelle, under a moonless sky, he attacked his wife, Mary Dean. She never had a chance. He murdered her in the cockpit, likely planning to dispose of her body overboard and tell authorities she'd been swept away by a wave. Lost at sea, a tragic accident, and $20,000 would be waiting for him on shore. But then everything went wrong. Dr. Arthur Duperrault saw something. Maybe he heard the struggle. Maybe he came up on deck at exactly the wrong moment. Either way, Harvey's carefully planned insurance scheme had just gained a witness, and Harvey couldn't let him live. He grabbed a knife and attacked the optometrist from Green Bay, killing him on the spot. But the commotion had awakened others. Jean Duperrault rushed into the main cabin to find out what was happening. Brian followed right behind her. Harvey murdered them both. Then he went to the children's cabins. 7-year-old Renee never woke up. 4 members of the Duperrault family were dead. Harvey's wife was dead. 5 bodies on a 60-foot yacht in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and 1 more person was still on board. Terry Jo had been asleep in her small cabin below deck when the screaming started. She heard stamping, shouting, sounds that didn't belong on a peaceful night at sea. Then silence. She waited in her bunk for 15, maybe 20 minutes, too terrified to move. When the screaming finally stopped, she climbed out and made her way to the main saloon. That's when she saw them. Her mother, her brother Brian, lying in a spreading pool of blood. She stumbled up to the deck, her mind refusing to process what she was seeing. And there was her father's body. And there was Captain Harvey, splattered in blood, staring at her with wild eyes. She asked him what happened. He struck her across the face and screamed at her to get below deck. "Get down! Get down!" She ran back to her cabin and curled up in her bunk, shaking uncontrollably. Then the water started rising. Harvey had opened the seacocks, deliberately flooding the ship. He was going to sink the Bluebelle with everyone on it. No bodies, no evidence, just another tragic maritime disaster. The water climbed higher, cold, black. Relentless, Terry Jo felt the ship listing, groaning as the ocean poured in. She was going to drown in this tiny cabin, alone in the dark. Suddenly, Harvey appeared at her door. He handed her a line attached to the ship's dinghy and told her to hold it while he grabbed something. But her hands were wet. The rope was slippery. The line slipped through her fingers and drifted away into the darkness. Harvey made a split-second decision, choosing to save himself and abandon the 11-year-old girl to die with the ship. The Bluebelle was sinking fast now. Terry Jo scrambled through the flooding corridors as the yacht tilted at a sickening angle. In the chaos, she spotted something, a small cork float, maybe 2 feet by 5 feet, that had broken free from the rigging. She grabbed it and held on as the Bluebelle made its final plunge beneath the waves. Then there was nothing but darkness and the sound of water. She was alone in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean on a piece of cork barely bigger than a coffee table. The next morning, a freighter spotted Julian Harvey drifting in the Bluebelle's dinghy. They pulled him aboard, and he immediately launched into his story. A white squall had come out of nowhere. The mast snapped. The hull was breached. A fire broke out. The ship sank in minutes. He tried to save everyone, but the chaos was too much. He was the sole survivor. The crew of the freighter had no reason to doubt him. He was a decorated war hero, a professional captain. His story was tragic, but plausible. Harvey was taken to shore and checked into a Miami hotel. Meanwhile, Terry Jo Duperrault was dying. She drifted for 84 hours, 3.5 days under the merciless sun with no food, no water, no shelter. Her lips cracked and bled. Her skin blistered. Hallucinations came and went. She slipped in and out of consciousness, the tiny float rising and falling with each wave. Every hour that passed decreased her chances of survival. The ocean is vast. A child on a cork float is nearly impossible to spot. But on November 16th, a Greek freighter called the Captain Theo happened to pass within visual range. A crew member saw something small and pale on the water. They changed course. When they pulled her aboard, Terry Jo was barely alive, severely dehydrated, sunburned, traumatized beyond measure, but alive. The news spread quickly. A child survivor from the Bluebelle had been found. When Julian Harvey heard the report from his Miami hotel room, he knew exactly what it meant. His story about the white squall was about to fall apart. A witness had survived. The sole survivor he'd left to drown was now the sole witness to his crimes. Within hours, Harvey checked out of his hotel. He registered at a different motel under a false name, and before authorities could reach him, he took a razor blade and ended his life. Terry Jo Duperrault would eventually testify about what she saw that night. Her account, combined with the evidence recovered later, painted a clear picture of what happened aboard the Bluebelle. But Harvey was already gone. He'd escaped justice the only way he had left. Terry Jo was adopted by a family in the Midwest and eventually tried to build a normal life. But how do you forget a night like that? How do you move past watching your entire family murdered? How do you explain surviving when everyone else died? She was 11 years old when she climbed onto that cork float. When she was finally rescued, she weighed 65 pounds. Julian Harvey gambled everything on a perfect crime at sea. He murdered 5 people for $20,000, and he almost got away with it. But he didn't account for one thing: the little girl in the cabin below deck, the one who wouldn't stop floating, the one who refused to die.